Hello everybody! Welcome back to another Shadowverse Worlds Beyond video, and today we're gonna talk about something kind of different. As you guys may know, or you haven't, let me just fill you in. There is about to be a balance patch, right? Or a balance patch announcement this coming few days, or like as I upload this video, probably the patches already announced what's going to be the changes. So before we get that patch itself, I wanted to like share some of my like predictions, or I guess kind of like a wish list of like cards that I think needs nerfs and buffs. So yeah, at the current set though, Arrow Omen, I think the game is actually pretty balanced. Like it's definitely like more balanced than other card games that I played in the past. But I do think a lot of people do not like the decks that are on top. And of course, there's some few cards that probably need some buffs. All right, let me just make this perfectly clear. I predict zero nerfs. All right, straight up, I predict zero nerfs. I think the game is fine as is, right? When it comes to the power level of like a lot of decks, there's like there's like two tier 1 decks, two tier 2s, right? And then a lot of tier 3s. I think it's at a really good spot balance wise, but of course, it could be better. It's not perfect, right? And it doesn't feel as good, especially like fighting Havencraft and Rune, the way they win the games, right? So, I do predict that Dragon and Portal will get buffs because at the current state, they're the worst classes in the game, right? I think they're both of them are fighting for like the worst class in the game at the current like moment. So yeah, let's get right into it. Let's go first with the first row, which like I will reveal a card or two that I think will get a nerf, or like I wish they would get a nerf if they are going to nerf. So first off, we have Runecraft. Okay, I mean, you already know this, right? Norman. Okay? So, I think Norman should be, a strong card. My issue with Norman is the fact that he is very, very easy to pull off even though you're not running Earthright. It's supposed to be in an Earthright deck, but he's, believe it or not, the Earthright decks of the high elo players, Shadowverse, actually run only 2 copies of him. Meanwhile, the spell boost version runs 3 copies of him. That's kind of weird to me. And what I think they should do with Norman is either they buff the cost to 7. That way, there's a lot of there's more answers. I just think that Coin Norman, right? Coin Norman, I think is too strong, right? Especially for some classes to deal with. But if it's turn 7, that means you won't be able to coin Norman on turn, you won't be able to coin Norman similar to how you coin Wilbert. And like another way that you can nerf Norman if you think that Norman should be a 6 cost is by nerfing the Earthright requirement, right? So at the current state, it only requires 1 Earthright to proc a mode. So 2 Earthright sigils is already like fine. But like if you make it 2 Earthrights, that makes it so that you would need 4 Earthrights in order to do the evolve. Now, I understand it's gonna make Earthright worse, right? Like it's gonna nerf spell boost, but it nerfs Earthright more. Maybe they don't even run it because it eats too much Earthright, and you want the Earthright sigils for Lilantim. So the more realistic option I think is to make it a 7 mana card. But that's just my take. Alright. And next up, Dimension Climb. Alright, I'm gonna be for real. I don't think this is gonna get a nerf too. But yeah, I think Norman has a higher chance of getting nerfed. But if they're going to nerf Declimb, I don't think they should make it so that you can play it on 0 cost. I think instead it should draw 5 Runecraft cards instead. So let me just explain real quick. You return 5 return your entire hand to the deck. You draw 5 cards, but the 5 cards that you draw are Runecraft cards, right? If it's Runecraft cards, that means it makes a Kuan OTK more consistent. And I think that's a better way of like having an OTK. That's a better OTK combo than like Cock Decline, because not only is like double Kuon more playable, but it also makes it so that, you know, it also makes it so that like you can like play around it more, and you can actually not get one shot so easily. Now, the problem I have with nerfing Declimb, of course, is the fact that if you nerf Declimb in this way, I do think Spell Boost Rune might just be really weak at that point, right? So I don't want Spell Boost to be unplayable, but at the same time, you gotta do something if you really want to like, make Rune not like perma top tier every set. So yeah, like definitely leaning towards Norman getting the nerf instead of Decline, but yeah, I think everybody's in unison when we say, yo, Cock Decline is the only thing that we don't like. So yeah, let's move on. Let's go to Sword. Like Sword? I mean, I don't think Sword's gonna get a nerf personally, but if they will nerf something, I think they should nerf Zirconia. I'm a Sword main, okay? I understand. This card plays itself, okay? This card literally plays itself. You can make the worst place known to mankind in the early game, and then you slam 2 Zirconias, and you'll just like outstat the opponent. Like 4 mana, 10 stats on the board is it's kinda strong, you know? 6/6 and 2/2/2s. It's kinda insane. It's a 10/10 with 4 mana. Now, I understand that Zirconia, like a Zirconia makes it so that Sword can actually be like a real deck. But at the same time, if you're gonna nerf this card, I think it should probably be either upping the cost by 1 or nerfing her stats to 3/3. That's it. It's either 3/3 or upping the stats, upping the card cost to 5. That way, second Zirconia isn't too strong. That's just my opinion though, right? But yeah, like I doubt it will happen. Alright, another thing though, like okay, this is the card that I think will get hit. Norman in this card I think will get hit if they do decide to nerf, and it's Maddening Venison. And we all know, right? We all know how this works already, right? They get 5 crests and they play Maddening Venison and they're suddenly full HP and you can't play the game anymore beyond that because you already used so much resources to get them low in the first place, and then they just heal it all back up. Now, the way they changed this, I think, has to do something with how they code crests, right? Which will be really hard. I don't know if they're up for it, but if they care to that extent, then I think that they will do it. And what I'm talking about is making it so that if you play a 5th crest, the oldest crest gets rewritten by the new crest that you put. That way, you could also like play a different crest that you might want, right? Or here's the fun part about this: you could also give somebody that crest, and then in order to remove a crest that they have. So stuff like Cruel, the forest card, right? It gives the opponent a crest, or stuff like Burn Knight, it gives opponent a crest. Now, I understand that might be like too strong of a nerf in the because it's an entire system change, right? It's an entire it's a shakedown, right? Of like what are you gonna do with crest just because of one card. But the more realistic thing with Venison, I bet, is probably upping its cost to 3 or nerfing the heal to 5. Or like not, yeah, maybe the heal to 5 isn't realistic, but at least the heightening of the mana cost, the play point cost is more like it's more like a possible. But yeah, those are the nerfs that I think that would happen, right? The highest chance of something getting nerfed, I think, is the Venison. The lowest chance of something getting nerfed, I think, is Zirconia. But I think these are like the best cards right now in this set. This 4 cards. I just think that they're really, what you call it. It's like you play this, you win the game. on curve, and if they don't have an answer, also with Norman, right? And like declimb, of course, like if the game drags out, there's no counterplay if they draw the exact card. Benison, of course, if you're any some sort of mid-range deck or aggro deck, they play this and suddenly like the game is really really hard. Unless they play this in a way, of course, that they only have 4 crescent below. But yeah, I think they intended Benison to be like, yeah, be like a delay death card instead of like, you know, like a heal to full card for 2 mana, I'm pretty sure. So I think those cards will get some changes. But alright, let's go to the more realistic things that will happen, and these are buffs. Alright, first off, we have Dragon. I'm gonna be perfectly honest, if they buff Fenny, Dragon might be busted. Just because Fenny unlocks so many possibilities in terms of OTK and in terms of overvaluing the opponent, snowballing healing, snowballing like a lot of value cards, and it's only gonna get worse if they if they release more broken ass like neutral cards. So like if they buff Fenny, how do I want her to be buffed? Okay, like I don't want her cost to be buffed, because if you make her like a 7 cost, I think it might be broken. I'm gonna be perfectly honest. But if you want her to be somewhat fair, I would say like giving her an evolve effect where like it could somewhat clear the board, or at least help her in clearing a board state. Not fully clearing it, of course, like Ryo, because Ryo, if you give like Fenny Ryo effect, it's kind of insane, right? But if you give her at least a little bit of utility or a little bit of board removal when you evolve her, I think it'll be really nice for her, right? And it does require an evolve effect for like it does require the evolve effect, so it's like it's good. I think it won't be too broken if they did that. Making her a 7 cost, I think, might be too much, but that's just my opinion. Alright, and I play Dragon. I mean, I play a lot of class. I play every class, so like I know for a fact that if they did that, Dragon might be busted. And of course, the more realistic buff I think that we'll get is to this card. I think this card is one of the worst cards in the game. 4 mana 3/3, you evolve it, you get a play point. It's in my opinion, it's just the worst card that you have to bring. So the only reason why you bring Lu Fang in like most Dragon decks, especially ramp decks, is literally just because there's no other ramp options, right? But she sucks. She really does. So how would I buff this if you were to ask me? Like, I wish that they would either buff her stats or give her like some sort of, I don't know, like some sort of like last word or something. Maybe not even have the evolve like be the ramp. Maybe make it a last word instead. That way you can play her on 4, right? And then if you evolve her, it does nothing. You get me? Like maybe that's like a better way of balancing Lu Fang. And you can also remove the overflow self-evolve, to be honest, right? But you know, you just want like better ramp, basically, right? You just want better ramp. And I think a last word ramp is like a good way to do it, because Lu Fang, I don't know, unless they plan to release better ramp cards in the future, Lu Fang ain't gonna cut it. Dragon is gonna be miserable until Lu Fang gets a buff, I think. So I do think Lu Fang just fixes everything for Dragon, at least from being bottom tier, if they decide to buff it. So yeah, those like personally I would prefer the Fenny buff just because I love Fenny and I want to play more Dragon Fenny, right? But this is the more realistic buff out of the two. Alright, next, Portal. Alright, let me just like say Portal might be the hardest thing to buff ever. And the reason why is every single deck they have sucks. Egg sucks, Puppet sucks, Artifact sucks. So you're like, okay, do you just buff everything? No, right? You can't do that. And they don't have base cards where you'll be like, okay, just buff this base card similar to, let's say, Dragon, right? And then suddenly the problem is fixed for every archetype. No! Because every deck runs different cards. So if you want to buff Portal as a whole, you have to buff every archetype. But the thing that I want to have buffs, I think, is the previous archetypes, which is the Puppet and the Artifact. So first off, I think Zwei should be a 4 cost. Straight up. Zwei should be a 4 cost. 5 mana 3/3 sucks. Now I get that she does get a removal, but if you compare this card to cards like Zirconia, like, hello? Like, what are we doing, right? Like, it's super bad, right? I think having her as a 4 mana play might be better, even if it's at the cost of nerfing her stats. I don't think the problem is her stats. I think the problem is the fact that she's 5 mana. So she can't really deal with wide board. So what if you can just prevent a wide board from happening in the first place by being able to play her in turn 4? At least that's what I think. Maybe make her a 2/2, right? Make her a 4 mana 2/2 and then summons Victoria is what I'm thinking. Just to make, like, you know, Puppet more relevant, or at least not complete dog shit, you know. Like, Synchronous Hearts, summoning Lloyd and Victoria for 6 mana, I think is one of the weakest plays that you can do. And of course, there's a 6/1, it dies to a fairy. It's like 6 mana, remove something, and also have a 1/6 ward, right? Like, let me check. Yeah, 1/6 ward with no Bane, by the way, because there's no Orcus. Yeah, this card sucks. And Realmia is over here, not because I want Realmia buff, it's more so I want Artifact to get a buff somewhat. I don't know how they do it. I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I don't know how they do it. But if they want to make Portal better in general, I do think the funniest version of Portal is definitely the Artifact. Yeah, I think Shadowverse is at a better place if Artifact is good. I wouldn't say OP, of course. I'm not talking about like set 1 OP type of stuff. I'm talking about like Artifact being relevant. I just think that it fits the class more. And if I were to change anything from Artifact, maybe make Realmia a 7 cost card or something. I don't know. Like, because 7 cost card means that there's still a lot of answers to her, right? And typically you don't have like you would need to god roll to get like 3 artifacts to drop her on turn 7, have 3 like complete artifacts, I think. So yeah, that's just what I think. But like I said, Portal probably won't get a buff for some reason, even though it's like not like the best class right now. And if they does get a buff, I do think like it's gonna buff a specific archetype that's doing really badly, right? They have the data, we don't, so they probably know what's best statistics wise, right? But gotta please, dude, this card, this card sucks. Holy. All right, so the last one that I'm gonna talk about is something that I just prefer, and the reason why I put Valhera here is not because I think Valhera needs a buff. I think Valhera is actually a decent card. I'm talking more so about the Truth archetype being buffed in general. Now, there's a lot of ways that you can buff like the Truth archetype. I think like a bunch of people on Twitter actually like mentioned it, like how, oh, this needs to be changed into this, that stats needs to be this, just so it can play into that, and etc. I'm not gonna show all of that, of course, at least yet. I might in a future video, but for now, right, this is just my predictions. I think they need to buff Truth because it's kind of bland. Like, Runecraft is kind of bland right now. For you to have some sort of variety, you'd have to play Earthright. And guess what loses every freaking time to Havencraft? You played Lilantim, banish. GG. It's over. Right? So, Truth. I think it should be at least at the same power level as Midrange Abyss if they do buff it. I hope so. And yeah, like, I think it would play well into a decent amount of the current matchups that we have, especially since Valheria is a hard counter to the Abyss Congregant Super Evo. I think that's what they intended Velharia to be a counter to the cards that copy themselves over and over again, right? But sadly, she doesn't get to do that because she doesn't even get played because her deck sucks. So yeah, just a personal thing, right? If I were to bet real money on it, guys, Dragon gets a buff. If we're talking about buffs, that's it, right? And like they're probably gonna buff Lufang. Artifact, I don't know how they buff Artifact. That's why like it's out of the question. And then for nerfs, the highest chance of getting nerfed, in my opinion, is Benison. That's it. Yeah, basically TLDR. Oh yeah, those are my predictions. Let me know in the comments down below. What are your predictions for the balance patch? What do you think needs a nerf? What do you think needs a buff? And I won't be surprised if they don't announce anything at all. I will be yeah, because it's not like the game's unbalanced or anything. They usually do nerfs and buffs in the previous Shadowverse when it's to the extreme. But right now, I don't think it's to the extreme. Outside of maybe Benison, but yeah, that's it. All right, that'll be it for me. Just a quick prediction video for y'all before it comes live. Hope you guys have a nice day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Bye bye.